Hello and welcome to our first lesson from Chapter 10, which is about spatial reasoning. Not special, but spatial, which is about space and three dimensions and whatnot. So the first section is called solid geometry. Now we're going to talk about 3D figures, three-dimensional figures, which fall into one of these four categories. It's either a prism, a cylinder, a pyramid, or a cone. Those are the ones we're going to talk about. And there's some variations on those, but we're going to talk about each of these separately. So it's kind of nice to have this one page as a reference that you can come back to and look at any time. Now remember, when you're identifying these, it's really identified by how many bases does it have, and what's the shape of that base, and what kind of sides or faces does it have. So we'll start out here with the prism. And the prism has two parallel congruent bases. That's the top and the bottom. Those are called bases. And they're congruent, and they have to be parallel. Now, they don't have to be right over each other. If they're offset a little bit, it changes the shape of the faces, which a lot of people think of as the sides, but they're called faces. And it may change their shape, but still, it's a prism, even if it's not directly lined up one base over the other. And by the way, these can be turned on their sides as well. So the bases could be on the left and the right. You just have to look for the two parts of the figure that are congruent to each other, they're parallel, and that makes them the bases, and no matter how it's oriented. So this is a triangular prism. This is a rectangular prism. You could have a square prism as well. This is a pentagonal prism because it has 5 sides. This one has 6 sides, so it's a hexagonal prism. Now, this is what I was talking about with if the top base and the bottom base are offset from each other a little bit, those are called oblique. And so you can see that they're kind of a leaning tower idea here. And instead of those faces being full of right angles, now we have a true parallelogram. They're not made up of squares or rectangles. They're made up of parallelograms. But the bases are still parallel and they're still congruent. So it's still a prism. Now, the next one, pretty straightforward and easy, is cylinder. Most of us are pretty familiar with that. Again, we have two parallel congruent bases, but they're circular. And they're connected by a surface that is curved. And if you were to cut it on one side and lay it out flat, it would make a parallelogram. In this situation, with a right cylinder, it would be a rectangle, could be a square too. But if they were offset from each other, it would definitely make a parallelogram. Now, pyramids, classic pyramids of Egypt, they have a square base. And they have not 2 bases, but 1. And they have a vertex on the top. So there's only one base. It's a polygon. Could be triangular, like up here in the left corner. It could be a square or a rectangle. Tower of Giza, the Pyramid of Giza, is a square pyramid, and it could be regular or it could be oblique. It could be the vertex isn't right over the center of the base. It could be offset. But again, we name them based on the shape of the base. So down in the bottom right-hand corner, we have a pentagonal pyramid, and up here we have a hexagonal pyramid, and over here on the left-hand side, we have a triangular pyramid. And then we have cones. Cones have only one base. It's a circle and a curved surface that connects it to the apex, the vertex up at the top. So that's how we describe each of those. And that pretty much covers the whole lesson on the different kinds of figures that we're going to deal with. Now, your homework activity is in Google Classroom, and I'm asking you to find some examples of these in your home. So read those directions, and if you have any questions, let me know.